Good evening. The press conference with Sheriff P.J. Tanner and Lieutenant Colonel Neil Baxley from Sheriff's Office Emergency Management Division is about to get started. We expect some of the local elected leaders to also speak afterwards. So that having been said, Sheriff Tanner.
Let me start out by apologizing to everyone for the time that it's taken us to finally make it to this room. There has been an unbelievable amount of discussion for the past, we're looking at the past 2 hours, on what should be done tomorrow here in Beaufort County, not only tomorrow, but in the days following. I think everyone, and let me go ahead and address that because probably everyone has not seen it, but the governor just had his press conference just a few minutes ago, and we wanted to wait till the governor finished his before we came in here and addressed anything here locally. As the governor indicated, that in Beaufort County, starting tomorrow, Saturday morning at 10 a.m., the barrier islands of Beaufort County will be under mandatory evacuation. That would be Hilton Head Island, Fripp Island, Harbor Island, Hunting Island, and Defusky Island. So those barrier islands will be under mandatory evacuation Saturday 10 a.m. The concerns surrounding those closures and those mandatory evacuations is the amount of storm surge that is expected from Hurricane Irma, 4 to 6 feet. Now, how does that relate to Hurricane Matthew? Because I think we need to kind of draw that out, and I think Neil will draw that out a little bit more in detail. 4 to 6 feet on top of what we expect 4 high tides during the storm phase. So we're looking at a 24-hour period of time. We'll have 4 high tides, and the high tides will be Sunday evening, Monday morning, Monday evening, Tuesday morning. And we're going to have sustained winds, and I'll let Neil, because I think you've got that written down. Sustained winds, and I think I'll use approximately 50 miles an hour, and you can go to it in more detail. So we got 4 to 6 feet surge water on top of what we're already having, or king tides is what we call. King tides are very high tides. So those high tides, again, 4 cycles of high tides on top of 9. I think they're about 9-0 tides now. And we also can't excuse and can't forget 12 inches, a potential 12 inches of rain. So a lot of water, a lot of wind, and the barrier islands are probably going to catch the brunt of the wind and tidal surge. The concerns that we have, of course, are with the amount of surge, winds, and rain coupled with the tides, but the concerns we have on the barrier islands outside of Defusky is the loss of the causeway. The causeway on 278 and the causeway on US 21. Of course, on these barrier islands will be heavy tree damage. We expect tree damage probably a little worse than we had in Hurricane Matthew. The loss of power and the loss of water. So the loss of facilities on those islands as well. So we're working with the chambers. I know Neil's also got some updated information on hotel opportunities in the Bluffton, Beaufort area. We're trying to move folks, of course, from the barrier islands inward. If we can get you moved inward, hopefully in one of our local hotels, Beaufort and Bluffton, then we can get you out of harm's way. There also are 2 shelters that will be open, and these shelters will open Sunday morning, and it will be the Bluffton High School and Battery Creek. So 1 north, 1 south. So, with the good neighbors that are inland, coupled with some hotel opportunities and shelters, or hopefully during the duration of the worst part of the storm, we'll be able to help with these folks. We will definitely open this up for any questions, and I'll turn this over to Neil to talk about some of the tidal problems. What you want to talk about? We'll just go through that map first and then show the other map.
what we're primarily concerned with is the storm surge. And this is a slosh data, which is sea, land, overland surge data, put together by the Army Corps of Engineers. This is the latest stuff from this year. It's about 2 years old, but this basically indicates what we're looking at in the scenario that the National Weather Service has forecast for us. Now we're very fortunate. The storm continues to shift west, west, west. Yesterday this time we were looking at a Cat 3 scenario, and we're getting better and better and better here, but we still have some potential impacts facing us. So what you're seeing here, as it's graduated, it gets darker and darker. What we're looking at is this medium blue right here, 4 to 5, 5 to 6 feet, which is areas such as in here, all of the barrier islands, a whole lot of Hilton Head, especially going up Broad Creek, and on the beach fronts and coming in Fish Hawk Creek, which is what drove the discussion that we've had for the last little while with the governor and the state staff in Columbia, because we're not really worried about, Port Royal Island, town of Beaufort. There will be some areas in Beaufort that you're familiar with, that you live here, you know where they are at, and they will get, if we get this kind of water, they will suffer some flooding. But we are really concerned about these beachfront areas. Our dune line was decimated during Matthew, so we don't have the natural protection there that we would have had 2 years ago. And so this is what drove the discussion. The mainland portions, Bluffton, Sheldondale, we're not worried about this because all this blue here is mostly marshland anyway. There's nowhere for the water to go to do us any harm. But out here and out here, there's a real possibility of some rather moderate to major impacts. During Matthew, we lost several causeways. Most predominantly was the causeway US 21 at the Harbor Island Bridge. The bridges are safe, they're secure, but the causeways are built on gravel and then concrete and asphalt on top of that, and they are subject to being washed out. We also lost a good piece of the causeway going to Cat Island during that storm. So this is what concerns us, which is why we went ahead and requested this, and the governor agreed with us. So putting up here on the map again, Harbor Hunting and Fripp, Dalfusky, and Hilton Head Island. Now what we've got, and that'll begin at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, a number of our hotels on Hilton Head have announced that they're going to close, and that's in compliance with the order. We do have some that in Bluffton that are remaining open. They were awaiting the governor's order, and that will give us an opportunity here for folks that are on Hilton Head or on Dalfusky that don't want to leave the island and or don't want to leave the county, and they've seen the traffic issues that we've been dealing with all day long west of Beaufort County. That will give them an opportunity to go to a place local, and if not, if they choose not to do that, we will have the 2 shelters open. Red Cross is ready to open them. Now I know that I've said we don't have hurricane shelters. This is not a hurricane. We do have shelters that are rated to tropical storm winds, which is what we're looking at in this scenario. So again, we run from the water, we hide from the wind, and the Battery Creek High School and the Bluffton High School are approved for tropical storm force winds. So the Red Cross will be setting those up and be ready for Sunday afternoon upon the arrival of the weather. I do want to touch on the traffic issues today. Most of it coming out of Georgia and Florida, and then coupled with the folks that did not feel comfortable with the storm scenario in Beaufort County and chose to go ahead and leave, which we support that decision entirely. Traffic on I-95 today has been impressive, is a good word. Basically a parking lot. Average speed was about 20 miles per hour if you could get that, and that was pretty much the length of the state on I-95. And people were researching their maps, and they were getting off of 95 on 321, on 68, on 64 up Colleton County, and those became parking lots. So by midday, the emergency management directors in Hampton County, and Allendale County, and Orangeburg County were all calling for law enforcement help to deal with the traffic because they were absolutely gridlocked. And again, this is our folks leaving, under an abundance of precaution, along with the folks from Georgia and Florida that were flowing into the state, because some 4 million people in Florida are under an evacuation order, and they are moving north and west. So it's been quite a challenging day for everybody. But Beaufort County, we're looking better and better by the minute, and we hope that the next update will be just a little bit better. But keep in mind, it could shift back. So we are staying on guard for a possible shift back to the right. And you need to remember, the storm has not yet begun to make the right turn that everybody talks about and everybody's anxious to see. So when that happens, if it happens quickly, we could be right back in the middle of the cone again, and we're moving forward in a hurry. But we've got all the resources in place. Captain Owens from the Highway Patrol is the local area commander for the forces down here. We're all ready to go. We're trying to play it according to what the situation is presenting to us at this moment. The winds, from what the National Weather Service is telling me, we're looking at 50 to 70 mile per hour winds on the south coast to begin sometime late Sunday night into Monday morning and last pretty much through the day Monday. And so we're looking for tree damage, we're looking for power lines down, all of the things that we've experienced before and possibly a little worse because of sustained 50 to 70 is what they're forecasting right now. And again, if it shifts to the left a little bit, that diminishes. If it shifts back to the right, that increases. And you need to understand that a shift down in the Florida Straits of 50 miles equates to 250, 300 miles up here. So it's always battling the science and trying to forecast it. And I applaud those guys at National Weather Service because we have really put them under the gun today to try and give us as much firm data as they could. All right, sir.
Any questions? So far.
So far.
Any questions?
Do you know how many people are still on those barrier islands at this time, who still need to evacuate starting tomorrow at 10?
It's been several hours. When the last check, quite a few people still remain on all of the barrier islands that we're talking about. Because there has not been an evacuation called until we're talking about it today, and it's mandatory tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I think everyone's, but not everyone, but there's been a lot of people sitting back waiting on that decision to be made. That decision was made. Barrier Islands, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Will there be any traffic changes to get those folks that are still on the islands off?
But we have a plan to, not only on 21, but 278, to reverse some of those lanes for a certain stretch of the road. We're in place to do that. We're not going to do it until we need to, but all of that's in place.
When do you plan to change that around? If someone, for some reason, wants to go back onto Hilton Island or any of the other islands, can they still do that at this point?
No.
At this point, yes.
At this point,
At
or the
10
point at 10 o'clock?
Right now?
Right now, yes.
Okay, but starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, they cannot go back onto these islands?
Cannot.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we need to express it again. Right now, you can go and come, kind of like an evacuation. But when you wait till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, you cannot return to these islands. We will. That's where the roadblocks will be set up. 21 and 278.
PJ, if we would lose the causeway, approximately how long would it take to rebuild a temporary one?
And I think we got a pretty good definition of that. When we were speaking earlier with DOT, we used 50-foot section of the causeway, a couple of days, maybe 3 days, but that's that section of causeway. Anything more or less than that could change on how long it would take, and exactly what part of the causeway did we lose. If we lost the causeway, at the foot of the bridge, then that might offer a whole different scenario for DOT. If it's just dirt and gravel and concrete, it could be a different thing. But it would not be, that repair would be a repair, it would basically be a Band-Aid on the problem. So it would limit the use of that road until it was fully repaired, but at least it would be some travel ability on and off the island. The islands, of course, 21 and 278. Mayor?
Thank you, Sheriff, and good evening. Our highest priority is to do what is necessary to ensure the safety of our citizens. And your town staff, your town council, sheriff and his deputies, our fire and rescue squadron, have all been hard at work to fully prepare ourselves to respond to whatever threat comes our way. As Sheriff Tanner indicated earlier, there's a lot of information to grapple with and understand in arriving at the decisions that the governor announced shortly ago. I think it's the right decision based on the information that is available to us at this time. Specifically, the threats of 50 to 70 mile an hour sustained winds, which is for a period of roughly 12 hours, plus or minus a few hours, is more than we experienced during Hurricane Matthew. I think the highest gust recorded during Matthew was 88 miles an hour at Hilton Head Island Airport. That's a concern to me. 4 to 6 feet of storm surge on top of king tides is a concern to me. The potential impact on the causeway to get on and off of our island is a concern. And as the sheriff indicated earlier, we had substantive discussion with SCDOT officials who I wouldn't say assured us at this point in time, but gave us a strong indication that the resolution to problems that we could encounter out there would be measured in days. I think we can all be grateful that most of our state has been spared of the potential impact of Hurricane Irma. I think we can be in prayer for those in Florida that are currently in harm's way. I'm optimistic about some of the changes in the weather patterns here in the last 24 to 36 hours, and a team of us will be meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow to reevaluate and consider current conditions on the ground at that point in time. But today, this is the best decision that can be made. Our highest priority is to do what is necessary to ensure all of your safety. Our next priority is to protect and preserve your property to the extent that we can. And again, many individuals are working very hard to do just that and to return you to your lives at such point in time as that is possible. And we will continue to evaluate those conditions as we go. So God bless you. Please be safe.
Mayor Billy, anything to offer? Concerns? Oh, that's right, you were gonna do a little song and dance, I remember.
They said I can't be short. I could say amen. No, my only message to people in the city is the fact that there's not a mandatory evacuation doesn't mean you can go to business, back to business as usual. We're looking at flooding in areas where we know we're weak and we'll be working, and managers already been working on those areas. But 4 to 6 additional feet on a king tide is going to have an impact in certain parts of the city. And the wind at levels, sustained levels at or greater than Matthew, we lost a lot of trees. So I would not say we're business as usual. If you have any concerns, there will be the shelter at Battery Creek High School. If you plan to go ahead somewhere further, I'd say go. But the most important thing is be safe. And that's to everybody in this room, our law enforcement, our firefighters, our first responders, everybody. This is a time for everybody to be very careful and mindful of each other.
Mr. Cubic?
No comment.
Okay. All right. Any more questions?
For the people that are staying inland, as far as emergencies go, is Beaufort Memorial still open for them? Obviously Hilton Head's gonna be closed because of the evacuation.
Beaufort Memorial will be open. I think they'll have some limited staff right now. They will just keep building that up. But they will, Coastal Carolina, I believe, it will be open. And we're working with Hilton Head Hospital now.
So is the emergency room still going to be open at Hilton Head Hospital? Because I didn't know if that was
we'll know for an absolute fact tomorrow morning, but definitely Beaufort and Coastal Carolina. Like I said, we're working with Hilton Head Hospital. There's some things that we need to do to make sure that can happen. Anything else? Yes?
Is there any idea at this point whether or not there will be curfews set on any of these islands?
You know, that's the discussion we'll have in the morning. As part of our ongoing discussion based on, you know, our National Weather Service report and some of the other calls that we'll have, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify what time the shelters will be open to accept people from these islands?
What time?
Sunday.
Sunday, but what time?
Not sure, not determined.
That's what David said, 9 a.m. Sunday morning.
9 a.m., okay. And if folks haven't left by Sunday, can they still leave these islands? Is there a time that's too late for them to leave?
Well, it's never too late unless you have to factor in the storm. That's what dictates what time you go. You know, in normal evacuations, we like to push you out ahead of the evacuation time. So, and that's what we're doing now. We're pushing you out ahead off the barrier islands before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, understanding that you're not going back until, you know, till things change. But if you sit back on Hilton Head or Fripp or any other barrier islands, so, well, I'm just going to sit this out until the wind gets real strong, and then I'll go ahead and leave at that point. The shelters are going to be available. We want you moving inland, because there are those, face it, there are those that are going to wait to that last moment. That last minute is when they're going to make their move. As long as they have electricity and food and water and, you know, all the luxuries of home, they're going to stay in their home until it's time to go. And we realize that. But we've got to start moving people off the islands as soon as we can, and 10 o'clock a.m. was the decision as the best time to do it. Because it takes so many hours to do that before tropical force winds actually start making an impact on us. So that's how we factor that in.
And I do have one more.
Okay.
Do you know at this point whether or not the flyover will be available for people evacuating Hilton Head Island? The
Sure.
Bluffton flyover? Okay.
Sure. All right. Thank you all. We'll let you know something again tomorrow morning as to what we do tomorrow.